A permit officer walked into Judge Judy's courtroom thinking he was about to collect another easy paycheck from a terrified small business owner. For 3 years, he'd been running the perfect scam, targeting family restaurants with fake violations, pocketing thousands in bogus fines, and destroying lives without anyone questioning his authority. He had official badges, government letterhead, and a system so sophisticated that even experienced business owners fell for it every single time. But what this corrupt official didn't know was that the restaurant owner sitting across from him had already uncovered evidence that would expose a criminal network spanning multiple states and involving dozens of fake permits worth over $2 million in stolen money. The courtroom was packed that Tuesday morning, cameras rolling for what everyone expected to be a routine permit dispute between a small family restaurant and the city's most aggressive enforcement officer. The defendant, Maria Gonzalez, clutched a folder of receipts with trembling hands, her life savings and 3-generation family business hanging in the balance over what seemed like standard health code violations. Officer Bradley Thompson sat confidently at the plaintiff's table, his crisp uniform and official documents radiating the kind of authority that had intimidated hundreds of business owners into paying whatever he demanded. His briefcase contained what appeared to be ironclad evidence of serious violations that would justify the $12,000 in fines he was seeking, plus immediate closure of the restaurant that had been Maria's family's livelihood for 37 years. But hidden in Maria's folder was a single piece of paper that would change everything. A document so explosive that it wouldn't just destroy Officer Thompson's career, it would trigger a federal investigation that would uncover the largest municipal corruption scandal in the state's history. What Judge Judy was about to witness wasn't just a permit dispute. It was the moment when a carefully constructed criminal enterprise, protected by official badges and government authority, would finally meet someone who couldn't be intimidated, threatened, or silenced. The confession that followed wouldn't just go viral. It would become evidence in a criminal trial that would send multiple officials to prison and return over $2 million to the small businesses they had terrorized for years. Officer Thompson had walked into that courtroom believing his usual intimidation tactics would work on national television, just like they had worked in backroom shakedowns for the past 3 years. He had no idea that Maria Gonzalez had spent 6 months secretly documenting his operation, recording conversations, and building a case that would expose not just his individual crimes, but an entire network of corrupt officials who had turned permit enforcement into their personal ATM machine. The moment Judge Judy asked her first question, Thompson's perfectly rehearsed story would begin to unravel, revealing lies so outrageous and a scam so brazen that viewers couldn't believe what they were hearing. And when the truth finally came out, it would prove that sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption isn't a lawyer or a politician. It's a grandmother who refuses to let bullies destroy her family's legacy. Before we dive into this incredible courtroom takedown that exposed one of the most shocking corruption scandals ever caught on television, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss these epic Judge Judy moments. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when this scammer's carefully constructed lies fall apart piece by piece on live television, because what you're about to see will change how you think about government authority forever. The moment Officer Bradley Thompson stepped into Judge Judy's courtroom that morning, he carried himself with the swagger of a man who had never lost. His polished black shoes clicked confidently across the marble floor as he adjusted his perfectly pressed uniform, the kind of crisp presentation that had intimidated countless small business owners into paying whatever he demanded without question. The badge on his chest gleamed under the studio lights, a symbol of authority that he had weaponized for 3 years to extract money from families who couldn't afford to fight back. His leather briefcase, stuffed with official-looking documents and violation notices, had become his most profitable tool, worth more to him than his actual government salary. Thompson had developed his scam into an art form, targeting family-owned restaurants in immigrant communities, where owners were less likely to challenge government authority or hire expensive lawyers to fight bogus charges. His method was brilliantly simple and devastatingly effective. He would arrive during peak business hours with a clipboard and an attitude, pointing out violations that didn't exist in health codes that he deliberately misinterpreted. Cracked tiles became structural hazards requiring immediate professional remediation. Normal kitchenware became equipment violations necessitating certified replacement. Simple cleanliness issues became biohazard situations demanding specialized cleaning services, all of which, conveniently, could only be performed by contractors who happened to kick back 50% of their inflated fees directly to Thompson. But this wasn't just about one corrupt officer abusing his power. Thompson was part of a sophisticated network, that had turned municipal enforcement into organized crime. His supervisor provided legal cover by rubber-stamping bogus violation reports. Approved contractors overcharged for unnecessary work and shared the profits. Even the appeal process had been corrupted, with hearing officers who consistently ruled in favor of the department regardless of evidence. It was a perfect system, designed to extract maximum money from the most vulnerable business owners, protected by official government authority that made resistance seem impossible. Maria Gonzalez represented everything Thompson's operation had successfully targeted for years. Her family's restaurant, La Cocina Familiar, had been serving authentic Mexican food in the same location since 1986, when her parents had scraped together their life savings to pursue the American dream. 3 generations had worked behind that grill, serving a community that had watched Maria grow up, get married, and eventually take over the business when her father's arthritis made the long days impossible. The restaurant wasn't just their livelihood, it was their legacy, their proof that hard work and determination could build something lasting in America. When Thompson first walked into La Cocina Familiar 6 months before the court date, Maria had no reason to suspect anything unusual. Health inspections were routine, part of running a restaurant, and her family had always maintained spotless conditions. But Thompson's inspection was different from anything she'd experienced in 20 years of business. He spent 3 hours photographing normal kitchen equipment, measuring distances between fixtures, and taking notes about things that had never been problems before. His demeanor was cold and aggressive, treating Maria and her staff like criminals rather than business owners trying to cooperate with a routine inspection. The violation report he filed the following week was unlike anything Maria had ever seen. 43 separate infractions, each carrying fines ranging from hundreds to thousands of dollars, totaling exactly $12,000 in penalties. Some violations were for equipment that had passed previous inspections without comment. Others referenced health code sections that didn't seem to apply to anything in her kitchen. The most expensive violations required immediate correction by certified contractors who, Thompson explained, were the only ones qualified to bring her restaurant into compliance. What Thompson didn't know was that Maria's nephew was a paralegal who had helped her research every single violation code cited in the report. What they discovered was terrifying. More than half the violations didn't exist in the actual health code. Others had been deliberately misapplied to situations they weren't designed to cover. The required contractors were charging prices that were triple the market rate for work that legitimate inspectors said was completely unnecessary. It wasn't an inspection. It was an elaborate shakedown designed to extract maximum money from a family business that couldn't afford to fight back through expensive legal channels. But Maria Gonzalez hadn't built a successful restaurant for 37 years by backing down from bullies, even ones wearing official badges and government authority. Officer Bradley Thompson had built his entire identity around being untouchable. At 42 years old, he possessed the kind of practiced confidence that came from 15 years of successful intimidation, where every confrontation had ended with terrified business owners writing checks rather than challenging his authority. His colleagues at the Municipal Enforcement Office knew him as the department's top performer, the guy who consistently brought in the highest fine collections and never had his decisions overturned on appeal. What they didn't know was that Thompson had turned government service into his personal profit center, generating more income from his corruption than most small businesses earned in legitimate revenue. Thompson's transformation from legitimate inspector to criminal mastermind hadn't happened overnight. It started 5 years earlier, when he noticed how easily immigrant business owners could be convinced that complex regulations required expensive fixes. A casual suggestion that a contractor might help them avoid future problems evolved into demanding specific companies. Those companies began offering him gifts, then cash payments, then formal partnerships in what had become a sophisticated money laundering operation. By the time he walked into Judge Judy's courtroom, Thompson was running a criminal enterprise that had extracted over $2 million from more than 300 small businesses across 5 different municipalities. His success depended on 3 crucial advantages that had never failed him before. First, his official government position provided instant credibility and legal authority that made resistance seem impossible. Second, he targeted vulnerable populations who were unlikely to challenge government officials or hire expensive lawyers to fight bogus charges. Third, he had perfected a system of documentation that looked completely legitimate to anyone without specialized legal knowledge. His violation reports were masterpieces of official-sounding language that referenced real health code sections, just applied in ways that had nothing to do with their actual meaning. Thompson's preparation for court appearances was as thorough as his scam operation. He studied each case extensively, memorizing health code sections and preparing responses to every question he might face. His briefcase contained laminated charts showing code violations, before and after photographs of supposed problems, and official correspondence that painted him as a dedicated public servant trying to protect community health. He'd testified in municipal courts dozens of times, always winning because judges trusted government officials and defendants rarely had resources to mount effective challenges. But Thompson had never faced anyone like Judge Judy Files, and he had certainly never encountered anyone like Maria Elena Gonzalez. What he saw across the courtroom was a 63-year-old grandmother in her best dress, clutching a folder of receipts and looking nervous about appearing on television. What he didn't see was a woman who had spent 6 months conducting the kind of investigation that would make professional detectives proud, gathering evidence that would ultimately destroy not just his career, but an entire criminal network. Maria's journey from victim to investigator had begun the morning after receiving Thompson's violation report. Unable to sleep after reading demands for $12,000 in fines, she had called her nephew Roberto, a paralegal who worked for an immigration law firm in downtown Los Angeles. Roberto's experience helping clients navigate complex legal systems had taught him to spot inconsistencies in official documents, and Thompson's violation report was full of them. Code sections that didn't exist, regulations that had been repealed years earlier, and requirements that applied to industrial facilities rather than small restaurants. Roberto's initial research revealed that Maria wasn't Thompson's first victim. Court records showed dozens of similar cases, all involving family restaurants, all resulting in settlements rather than trials, and all featuring the same approved contractors for required remediation work. The pattern was obvious to anyone who looked closely, but no one had looked closely because the amounts involved seemed too small to justify expensive legal challenges, and the defendants were exactly the kind of people who trusted government authority rather than questioning it. Maria's real breakthrough came when she decided to contact other business owners who had faced similar violations. What started as casual conversations with other restaurant owners became a systematic investigation that revealed the true scope of Thompson's operation. Elena Morales from Casablanca had paid $8,000 for violations that were identical to Maria's. Carlos Rodriguez from El Pueblo had been forced to install expensive equipment that legitimate health inspectors said was completely unnecessary. Rosa Martinez from Familia Kitchen had actually closed her restaurant rather than pay the $15,000 in fines Thompson demanded for violations that made no sense to anyone in the restaurant industry. Each conversation revealed new details about Thompson's methods and the network of contractors who enabled his scam. The same 3 companies appeared in every case, always charging premium prices for work that other contractors said was unnecessary or overpriced. The same appeal process consistently ruled in Thompson's favor, regardless of evidence presented by restaurant owners. The same hearing officers dismissed legitimate challenges while rubber-stamping Thompson's recommendations for additional fines and penalties. But Maria's most damaging discovery came from an unexpected source. Roberto had suggested she request all documents related to Thompson's inspection under California's Public Records Act, a legal tool that most small business owners didn't know existed. What arrived 3 weeks later was a treasure trove of internal communications that revealed Thompson's true motivations and methods. Email exchanges with contractors discussing profit-sharing arrangements, text messages coordinating inspections with contractors' availability to maximize revenue, internal memos discussing strategies for targeting businesses that were unlikely to mount legal challenges. The most explosive document was a spreadsheet tracking Thompson's performance metrics over the previous 3 years. Revenue generated per inspection, success rates for different types of violations, and demographic breakdowns showing his deliberate targeting of immigrant-owned businesses in specific neighborhoods. The spreadsheet revealed that Thompson had generated over $400,000 in fines during the previous year alone, with his personal cut from contractor kickbacks exceeding his official government salary by more than 60%. Maria spent the next 2 months building a case that would have impressed professional investigators. She photographed every aspect of her kitchen to document conditions before and after Thompson's required repairs. She obtained estimates from legitimate contractors showing that required work had been overpriced by 300%. She compiled testimonials from other business owners describing identical experiences with Thompson and the same network of approved contractors. Most importantly, she documented every lie in Thompson's violation report with references to actual health code sections and explanations of how they had been misapplied. By the time Maria's case reached Judge Judy's courtroom, she possessed evidence that could destroy Thompson's career and expose a criminal conspiracy involving dozens of officials and contractors across multiple cities. But she also understood that Thompson's confidence came from years of success using intimidation tactics against people who couldn't fight back effectively. He expected to face another terrified business owner who would be overwhelmed by his official authority and professional presentation. Thompson had prepared for this television appearance the same way he prepared for every court hearing. He studied Maria's background, identifying her as exactly the kind of victim who had made his scam profitable for years. Immigrant grandmother, limited English, family business operating on thin margins, no legal representation, and a history of compliance with government demands. His strategy was simple. Overwhelm her with technical language, present himself as a dedicated public servant protecting community health, and rely on his official authority to make his version of events seem more credible than hers. What Thompson couldn't have prepared for was Maria's 6 months of intensive investigation, her nephew's legal expertise, her detailed documentation of his criminal operation, and her absolute determination to expose the truth regardless of personal cost. He walked into that courtroom expecting to face another victim. Instead, he was about to encounter the person who would finally hold him accountable for years of corruption and abuse of power. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose not just individual crimes but systematic corruption that had destroyed families and communities while enriching those sworn to protect them. Thompson's confidence was about to meet Maria's preparation, and official authority was about to collide with documented truth in a way that would change both of their lives forever. Judge Judy's first question seemed innocent enough, the kind of routine inquiry that Thompson had answered hundreds of times before in municipal courts across the state. Officer Thompson, can you explain to me exactly what violations you observed at Mrs. Gonzalez's restaurant that justify these $12,000 in fines? Her tone was conversational, almost friendly, giving Thompson every reason to believe this would proceed like every other hearing, where his official credentials carried more weight than any defendant's protestations. Thompson launched into his practiced presentation with the confidence of a man who had never been challenged. Your Honor, during my inspection of La Cocina Familiar, I documented 43 separate violations of municipal health code, ranging from structural deficiencies to equipment failures that pose serious risks to public safety. He opened his briefcase with theatrical precision, removing laminated photographs and violation reports that looked impressively official under the courtroom lights. But Judge Judy's follow-up question caught him off guard. 43 violations? In a restaurant that's been operating successfully for 37 years without any previous major infractions? Her eyebrows raised slightly, a subtle signal that experienced courtroom observers knew meant trouble was brewing. Thompson's practiced smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered his composure. That's correct, Your Honor. Unfortunately, Mrs. Gonzalez has allowed conditions to deteriorate significantly over recent months. Thompson's voice carried the condescending tone that had intimidated countless business owners into paying whatever he demanded. But Judge Judy wasn't a frightened restaurant owner, and her next question revealed she'd been doing her homework long before Thompson arrived in her courtroom. Mr. Thompson, I'm looking at your violation report here, and I see you've cited Section R3195 of the California Health Code. Can you tell me what that section actually covers? The question was delivered with deceptive casualness, but Maria watched Thompson's confident expression begin to crack as he realized Judge Judy had read the actual health codes rather than simply trusting his interpretation. Thompson's face went completely white as Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice cutting through his stammered deflections like a surgical knife. Mr. Thompson, I asked you a simple question. What does Section 114195 actually cover? The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity as Thompson frantically shuffled through his papers, searching for an answer that didn't exist. Your Honor, that section deals with equipment maintenance and... His voice trailed off as he realized he was trapped. Judge Judy's expression hardened into the look that had terrified litigants for decades. Mr. Thompson, Section 114195 was repealed in 2019. It doesn't exist anymore. The courtroom erupted in gasps as Thompson's carefully constructed facade completely collapsed. So either you're using outdated codes, or you're making them up entirely. Which is it? And then came the moment that would destroy his life forever. The codes, it wasn't supposed to. If you're amazed by how Judge Judy just exposed this scammer using a single health code question, wait until you see what happened when she started digging deeper into his so-called evidence. Hit that like button if you think this permit officer is getting exactly what he deserved, and keep watching because what comes next will absolutely blow your mind. Thompson's confession didn't just stop at admitting he used fake health codes. Judge Judy wasn't finished with him yet, and Maria still had that explosive document hidden in her folder that would turn this courtroom disaster into a federal criminal case. The next few minutes would reveal the true scope of Thompson's criminal operation, expose the network of contractors who helped him steal millions from small businesses, and show exactly how Maria had been secretly building a case that would send multiple people to prison. Trust me, you haven't seen anything yet, because Thompson's biggest lies were still about to be exposed in the most devastating way possible. The moment Thompson's voice cracked on national television, his entire criminal empire began collapsing in real time. Within hours of the episode airing, Permit Scam Exposed was trending nationwide as millions of viewers shared the clip of his pathetic confession. Local news stations picked up the story, federal investigators opened a criminal probe, and dozens of victimized business owners finally came forward with evidence of Thompson's systematic corruption. Maria's hidden document, the internal spreadsheet tracking Thompson's illegal profits, became the centerpiece of a federal racketeering case that ultimately sent Thompson and 6 co-conspirators to prison for a combined 48 years. The contractors who enabled his scam lost their licenses and were forced to pay restitution, exceeding $2 million to the families they had helped defraud. But the real victory belonged to every small business owner who watched Thompson's lies crumble and realized they didn't have to be victims of corrupt officials anymore. Maria's courage inspired legislation, requiring transparency in municipal enforcement, and created legal protections for businesses targeted by fraudulent inspections. That's the courtroom confession that shocked the nation and proved that preparation and courage will always triumph over corruption and intimidation. Thompson thought his badge made him untouchable, but he learned that truth has a way of surfacing when someone finally refuses to be silenced. If you loved watching this scammer get exactly what he deserved, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. What did you think of Maria's incredible investigation? Let us know in the comments below and share this video with any small business owners who need to see what happens when corrupt officials finally meet their match.